We've got all sorts of amazing things here. Look, I thought this, at first, was a Pokemon.
You are now seeing
I suspect that Pokemon was modelled on that. That's a variety of squash called a Turk's turban, and it's squash I want to cook for you today. It's the beginning of the squash season.
I don't cook enough for squash. Maybe squash soup is about as adventurous.
OK, well, I want you to cook this recipe, Holly, because it's really, really easy. But this is the most familiar of all the squashes.
Yeah.
The butternut, we import them, we use a lot of them. But this is a beautiful English squash called a Crown Prince. Butternut squash, good flavour. This, arguably, even better. And I'm just preparing some squash for the cooking method that I think does it the most justice, which is basically roasting it.
Do you peel it with a peeler?
I usually peel it with a knife because the peel's quite thick. And I'm going to use a bit of the butternut squash on the tray there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quickly take another wedge off this Crown Prince and get the skin off that. And
I see.
if you want just squash as a delicious side vegetable, roast it with garlic, a little bit of rosemary, some shallots, which I'm going to put in now. But then you can build those kind of flavours up with some other things. So into this particular pile of squash, I'm going to add these shallots. Some of the smaller ones are whole, and the bigger ones have been cut in half. A little bit of rosemary for flavouring. Yeah. Now, that in itself is a beautiful side dish.
It looks
squash, it's pretty, isn't it? I mean, look at the inside of that.
It's just lovely.
And the green on the outside. It's so appetising. And these are all the flavours you need for a really terrific tray of roast squash.
So a bit like roasting potatoes.
Bit like roasting potatoes, but you've got so many more flavours. You don't need to parboil them. It's just chop it into the tray, into the oven. That would take about half an hour, at which point the mushrooms would go in.
OK.
And then I would have something like this. So these have been roasted.
Ah.
And that's...
And you can smell it. It all smells
beautiful
yummy.
smells, the rosemary, the herbs, the sweetness of the onion. There's a kind of creaminess to the squash. You can then finish that in a number of ways. If you're on a bit of a healthy trip, you can put that on top of some nice winter salad leaves, like the ones we have over there. Oh. But if you're feeling a little bit more celebratory, then a sheet of puff pastry. This is the very straightforward...
Did you whip this up this morning?
This is the ready-rolled variety, which I am... As long as it's all butter, that's what I say. If you're buying puff pastry, and you cut an edge, because when it puffs, this gives you a lovely little lip. So you just leave about 1 centimetre around the edge. You're not cutting right through the pastry. And then I'm arranging these vegetables over the puff pastry, just scattering them like this.
It's actually very simple, isn't it, this?
Really easy. Everything, all these... but, you know, you've already made a delicious dish here. You could eat this just as it is.
Yeah.
It's just to make it a little bit special and celebratory that I'm turning it into this puff pastry tart. So to get all those on, just... spread them around a bit with my fingers, and then, of course, there's one thing when you're cooking, you know, you want to finish off a tart and make it just extra yummy, a little bit of cheese. And here we've got two of my favourite. This one's been running away with itself ever since it came out. Look at it.
This is a very mobile,
travelling.
stinking bishop, isn't it?
That's a lovely stinking bishop. That one, which is a really strong flavour cheese. Almost too runny to cook with that one. If it's a firm... look... little bit there.
I don't
miss it.
Have that later.
That is good. That is good.
Taleggio, another great cooking cheese, a wonderful melting cheese. And I'm just going to shuffle a few bits of cheese in there. And this then goes back in the oven just for about 15 minutes for the cheese to melt and for the pastry to puff up.
Oh, that looks so good.
I think we've actually got one in the oven.
Oh, good. I do hope so. I'd have been bitterly disappointed.
See, this is what we're gunning for. Look at that. I'll just zip that one out the way.
Now, I know at River Cottage you pride yourself on not having any waste, but I'm not surprised. I mean, who's going to... There is literally not going to be any waste when you cook something as beautiful as that anyway.
I mean, if you had a nugget of cheddar in the fridge that was getting a bit crusty, or a bit of old goat's cheese, you could use that instead of the taleggio. And you know, if you roast some squash for Sunday lunch and there's some left over...
There's no rules to it.
Go for it there, Holly.
I am astonishing how much we waste. And we grumble about sort of food budgets and how much we've got. And an average family throws away a fortune's worth of food. Yeah, it's in the hundreds of pounds a year. When we did our waste programmes for BBC One, our challenge was both to people at home and to the supermarkets, because there's also a lot of food waste in the supermarket supply chain.
And to their credit, they have been stepping up. There's always more that they can do, but a lot of the supermarkets have now made big commitments to redistribute their food as it goes past its use-by date to charity sector, which is a good place
As
for
they
it to
should
end
do.
up.
This is
How are you getting on with that?
Butternut squash is so sweet.
Isn't it? It's that's the thing.
It's really yummy.
And actually, the earthiness of the mushrooms and the tang of the cheese offsets that sweetness.
Not very much washing up either, just eat it out of the tray.
Exactly.
I know, exactly.
Stunning.